Hello everybody, welcome back to the series on Sass. Now if you missed the last video in which we solved the dilemma of using Sass mixins and Sass extensions or any of the previous videos for that say, you can check out this card rotation popping right over here, and if you're someone from the future, that is the link to the whole series. But with that out of the way, in this video we're gonna look at another amazing tool which Sass provides us with. It's not necessarily a tool, it's more like a toolkit. We'll get into what the toolkit is and how to use the toolkit in the later part of the video, but before we get into that, let's understand why we need to use that toolkit. Now we all know Sass variables are amazing. They're amazing at reducing your work, maintaining your code, and making your life peaceful, but sometimes we just go a little over while using Sass variable. We might have a primary color, but we might also now need a primary color light, primary color dark, slightly more dark, shadow, light shadow, and whatnot. And problems like that is exactly why we need to use this toolkit, which is nothing but Sass functions. Sass functions are a bunch of inbuilt function which helps you with tasks like manipulating colors or do some arithmetics, and not only that, you can create your own Sass functions which do some specific work according to your needs. Now to understand Sass functions a lot more better, let's jump into an example which I've made. It's a simple card, nothing special about it, but as you can see there are some minute details to the card. We have a primary color and a secondary color, orange and blue. The header has a slight shadow which is not necessarily black as per se, or darker shade of black, but it's the darker shade of a primary color or the background of the header itself. If you don't know about Sass functions, or if you might not have seen the first part of the video, you might have actually ended up using another variable which keeps the text value of that particular color code, and that is by no means wrong, but in doing that you now have a variable which is actually dependent upon another variable's value, so the whole advantage of using a Sass variable actually diminishes over here. Now if you hover over the button, you also see that there is a little bit of back box shadow which pops up when I hover, which is slightly more brighter than the color of the button itself, and stuff like that is actually where Sass function come very handy, manipulating colors or doing some calculations or arithmetic which you don't really want to do. But with that being said, let's jump into now VS Code and understand what is actually happening and how are we using this Sass functions. Now as you can see over here, we have a pretty simple Sass file with a dot card having a having a container which is actually the exterior container of the box, the header which is using a background color, but here is something which is kind of new to you. The text shadow actually has something known as darken in it, which is a Sass function, and as the name suggests, it darkens a specific color by some specific volume, and I've passed here my primary color to make it more dark by 15%. Now we'll get into how it actually does that calculation, how it actually changes stuff in a little bit, but also let's scroll down a little bit more where we have a button. Now as you can see, I've already made some preparations to change the shadow of the button because I don't really like it. It's too bold for me, so I wanted the color to be a little opaque, and that's what exactly transparency function does. It makes your color a bit more transparent by specified volume. For example, I want to make it transfer by like 50% or 0.5. I want this opacity to change by 0.5, and as you can see, it's already worked the charm. It's not as bold as it used to be. And also there is another function known as lighten, which does exactly opposite to darken, lightens your color by a specific amount. Here it is 5%. And as you can see, all our colors are actually dependent still on only one primary color, and if we were to go ahead and change this primary color to say a little green color, you'll see all the other colors change accordingly. Now how does the function like darken, lighten and transparency really work? Now if you guys are aware, there are different coloring models present in CSS, namely Xcode RGB, and HSL. And HSL is something which you guys should be aware of. HSL stands for hue, saturation, and lightness. So what really darken and lighten function does, it converts your color from any coloring model to HSL and then manipulates the lightness and then converts it back to hex code, which is then stored in your CSS. But how does the functions like transferize really work? Now again, we have something known as alpha to coloring models of RGB A and HSL A, and also hex code has another 2 bits after the 6 bits, which tells us about the alpha property of your color. The alpha property is basically how opaque your color is, and it goes from 0 to 1, and the transferize function does nothing but change that alpha value by the said amount. If I were to come back into my VS Code and were to change my transferize from 0.1 to 1, you can just see my box shadow is completely gone, because now my alpha changed from whatever the value was, which was originally 1 I guess, to now 0. And similarly, if I were to come over here and change my darkness to say like 50% or 40%, you can see the shadow is a lot more darker now, because now my primary color's lightness has been decreased by 40%. And that was just an introduction to Sass Functions. So if you guys have understood something new, don't forget to drop me one of the like buttons. And in the next video, we will be looking at some other tool which Sass provides us with, which actually makes working with functions a lot more interesting. But until then, check out this video over here, which the YouTube algorithm has chosen all on his own just for you. And also subscribe if you haven't already.